How is everyone today? Welcome, welcome,
Mhm.
welcome to Salty Talk. We're so glad you're here. Community ministers, this is for you and about you. We're just excited to be here today. I have two of my favorite people on the planet here with me, Erica and Jerome. How are you, my friends? I love you. I miss you. You know, we're coming at you and we're going to talk about effective storytelling. Now, if you are listening to this and you're thinking, I've been there, I've done that, hang tight. We've got a lot of content for you, and again, this is for you. It's about you. We love to just share these stories and share this content. So just hang in and just listen because let's be honest, we know you want to. So we're going to talk about
Facts.
effective storytelling, right?
Facts.
So we're going to cover the why, the when, and the how of community ministers. Like we want to know why we tell stories. I mean, we know Jesus did it. He was super effective. You know, it builds awareness. You know, it motivates that passion and compassion. So we want to just unpack the why first. So Jerome, my main man, why would we want to tell stories in an effective way?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I think that why we tell stories is why we exist, right?
Mm,
The thing that really sticks out to me is stories stick. So you think about the most impactful movies that you ever saw. It's a story. The most impactful novel that you ever
mm,
read. It's a story. The most impactful conversation that you probably had was centered around a story.
mhm,
Oh, there's this best-selling book that has been on the
mhm.
bestseller list since bestseller list exists called the Bible, full of stories. So that's why we tell stories is because stories work. Stories bring awareness. Stories
Mm,
help people engage. Stories educate. It's like a Swiss Army knife. And so in the community
mhm,
minister space, you want to tell stories because it gives context to so many things that we do, so many things that we're
mhm,
responsible for. And that's the why. Like
mm.
it's stories. It's and not just boring stories, like you said, effective stories. You know,
Right.
I
Mhm.
think that's also very important. And so I'm excited about this episode because we get to talk about, how to do that and what actually makes a story effective and so on and so forth. So that's my
Yes.
2 cents as to why we tell stories.
Like everything we do rises and falls on stories when it comes to
Mm,
being a community minister. Like it's kind of the flag wheel that keeps everything going. Because if we all
Hmm.
think
yes.
about, like, listener, if you're thinking about how did I get in this seat of being a community minister, my guess
Mhm,
is
Hmm.
that you either watched somebody's story unfold, you heard a story, your story, has to do with it. But all of that revolves around how did we learn about the way God is working in people, organizations, just communities around us? And all of that has to be done via story. Like you said, like Jesus told stories, his whole ministry, that's how his ministry was built. And so, what else should we do but that?
Yeah. And do you ever think about if, like you said, how did you end up in that seat as a community
mhm.
minister? And you just answered the question like, I signed up, I turned in my resume, and then boom.
Right.
You'd be
Yeah.
like, wait, say more. There's got to be more to this story than what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, stories bring people in. It's necessary. It's essential.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is.
And like as we are walking through being a community minister, I just like I'm a visualizing person. So I feel like I just picture this like satchel or this like treasure chest that we're pulling with
Mm,
Mhm.
us that like we are picking up so many stories, whether we are realizing it or not. And we have to determine, okay, actually I do, even though I don't think of them as stories, I think of them as meetings I'm having or site visits or coffee with
mm,
someone or an email that I get. But actually, all of those things are stories. So they're all in this treasure chest because I know they're valuable. When am I going to look into that treasure chest to determine, okay, what kind of story do I need to tell in order to bring awareness, in order to
mhm.
inspire, in order to
Yeah.
educate, in order to celebrate, right? There's so many purposes of telling stories, but like the when is a strategic question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that you can hit you can hit both. Like, you can hit the individual story of, like, this is such and so, and this happened to her. Of
Mhm.
course, there's some pitfalls that you have to be made aware of. Like, if you're going to tell that story, you have to be sensitive. You have to protect
Mhm.
their integrity. Of course, if it's talking about an individual, you don't really want to exploit that. So,
Mhm.
you have to be very careful in that vein. But then there's
Mhm.
the organizational stories of, hey, everybody, there's this organization, and we want to highlight this organization, and we want you to know more about it. We want you to create awareness, because with that awareness, there's the story within there that's going to stick.
Mhm.
That's the why behind it, but it's gonna stir up that passion, and it's gonna stir up
Mhm.
that compassion, and that's that flag wheel that's just going to go round and round and round. And, here you are sitting in your sanctuary, or you're sitting in a Bible study, or wherever, and you're
Mhm.
hearing this story that's going to stick about this organization. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, like, this is something I could really get behind. Like, I didn't know that this existed. But I feel
Mhm.
like there's a place for both of those when
Mhm.
you're telling stories.
And another angle in terms of when we tell stories, I think when it's relevant. And so,
Mm,
Mhm.
Erica, you had alluded to it, like having this treasure chest of stories. Like I'm walking around with these stories, and at the appropriate time is when I'll tell a story. So when you look at Jesus's ministry, he told
mhm.
parables when they made sense in the
Mhm.
context of the conversation.
Yes.
Oh, the kingdom
Yes.
of heaven is like, and it was relating
Yes.
to what they were actually talking about at the time. So there's so many times where somebody's talking about something and something sparks in my mind, and I'm like, oh, I have a great story that coincides with exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's when you tell the story. So you tell it, and that's more on a one-on-one basis.
Mhm.
Seasonally, you can tell a story. Like it makes sense to tell a story about giving around the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Christmas
Mhm.
story may not fly so well when it's May. So
Mhm.
these are
Yeah.
just different little, easy questions that we can ask ourselves as to when is the right time to tell a story. When a person is curious,
Mhm.
that's a
Mm.
opportune time to tell a story. When an organization is looking for answers, when
Mhm.
they're looking to cast vision or whatever the case may be, let me tell you a story about how our church
Mhm.
started in, single mom ministry or homelessness ministry or there's even a ministry that we have at our church is senior ladies. It's called Reap What You Sow. They make these quilts and blankets for
Mhm.
newborn babies,
Cute. Yeah, they
especially the
do.
preemies. Yeah, it's so awesome, and they
That's
pray
so
over them.
cute.
It's amazing. Like, and that was
Yeah.
just a little story, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're so cute.
Yeah.
Like, and you
I
can
I
know.
see
know,
the quilts
right?
and all that stuff. So,
I want one.
Yeah.
the win,
Yeah.
the win is super important. I think the win, if you tell it at the right time, like you catch the wave at the right time, man, you can surf that
Mhm.
thing for a really long time, and the experience
Yes.
is
Mhm.
epic.
Yeah.
And
Truth.
and
Truth.
I feel like as the person, let's just go with this metaphor of like the treasure chest and the bag and trying to figure out when, you
Hmm.
also have the responsibility of being the gatekeeper to say when it's not time. Because I've been in
Yeah.
situations where maybe I meet with communications or the production team and it's Christmas and they're like, we want to tell a story about whatever. Do you have a family that's going through a hardship? And can we film that? Right. Like they're not in the
Mm.
seat we're in. So maybe they're not thinking through all the right things, but I'm thinking, I don't want to exploit a family in a tough time. So we have a great video.
Hmm.
Like that
Hmm.
cannot be my end goal. I'm the gatekeeper
Hmm.
because I'm the one that is kind of holding the story. And so us as
Mm.
community ministers, when we're entrusted with somebody's story, even organizations that are telling you stories of the people that they're serving, you're being
Yeah.
entrusted with that so that you can bring
Mm.
accurate awareness and protect the person and their situation.
Yeah.
And honestly, being dignifying in that process. Jerome, when we were
Mhm.
prepping and talking about this episode, you talked about asking them, like, do you feel comfortable being on film? If the answer is
Love
Hmm.
that.
no, then no, we're not pushing them. We're not going to go, well, what about here? How about this? What if I, nope, we're going to
Mhm.
respect it. And we're going to
Hmm.
help kind of stiff arm that to any others that are trying to push it. So it could be that for you, community minister, in your situation, it may not be like in 6 months, once the situation's resolved. We all know the enemy doesn't work like that. He's not like,
Right.
oh, good, it's all
Yeah.
like tidied up now. I'm going to move on and leave that person alone.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, there's a spiritual warfare thing going on in
Mhm.
everybody's story that's facing crisis, right? It's that the vulnerable have been preyed upon. And it's our
Mhm.
job to help other humans see humans for who God created them to be and what they're facing, and not a label of who they are or what they've
Mm.
done, right?
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
that. I love that who part of like who are we telling the stories to? I actually have a story about that. Of there was an organization and they were supplying Christmas gifts, and the members were so excited and they were so, like, oh, it's Christmas and there's these children and they're vulnerable and we're going to
Mhm.
go buy all these gifts. And their want was, can we deliver the Christmas gifts to the children? And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, no.
No.
No. And they truly did not understand. And that was
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
there was a narrative to frame that up for the member of like, well, if you were in their situation, would you want
Mhm.
people coming to your house on Christmas morning or and parading all of these gifts that they bought your children that you didn't know what that were
Mhm.
in? And their
Mhm.
faces just fell. And they were just not aware. So I think that when you're sharing, you can tell a different story. You can frame
Mhm.
up the narrative for the people that you're telling and say, this is actually the reality. And that's that moving into sort of the how. It's the
Mhm.
the mood. You really have to understand the mood of the story.
Mhm.
And the narrative and the posture of that whole situation of like, this is a negative. We are correcting that. Again, the enemy is at work here. We are shedding
Mhm.
light into that dark situation, but you have to be very careful because it is a dark situation and we're coming into
Mhm.
that. So, the posture, the transition into that, moving into that space, it has to be very, very respectful. Again, you're asking, you have to be very careful with your words to not, charge in with the big
Mhm.
rich church that is going to solve all your problems, and now you have a testimony. You're
Mhm.
welcome. You
Yeah.
really
Mm.
just don't want to come in with that posture of like, what is good news for you? And how can we serve
Mhm.
you? And then how can we continue to serve you and not
Mhm.
exploit it on our big giant screens and tell
Yep.
everybody, how we're so great. It's like,
I think you're spot on. And honestly, when we think about storytelling ethically, you also have to think about community trust that you are making or breaking.
yes.
So
Mm.
it's no matter the size of your church, the organization that you're telling the story of, the director could be sitting in your congregation. And so you better be telling that story accurately, right? The
Mhm.
Mhm.
individuals whose story you're telling, they could be sitting right there and you don't want an edit or whatever. They're like, wait, I didn't want, that's not what I was hoping for,
Yeah.
right? You just have
Mhm.
to bring the integrity and the weight of what's hanging in the balance of the trust that the church is either being building into or it's being broken down by how
Mhm.
well you tell stories.
Yeah.
So we can't
Yeah.
forget that.
Yeah.
That's our job,
Yeah.
right?
That's a really great point. It makes me think about this time we had a guest speaker, and she really wasn't a guest speaker. She was just highlighting her organization and exposing ways on how the church could come alongside this organization and partner. So I'll drop the name. So this is part of how to ethically tell stories. Do you say the name or do you not say the name? So
Uh-huh.
I'm sure that this organization wouldn't mind me saying the name. It's called She Is Safe. They deal with
Mm,
women and men, consequently, who have been
mhm,
trafficked or who are being trafficked.
Mm.
So she gets up on the stage. She shows this picture, and it's of a four-story hotel building. It's in
mhm,
Nepal. The first floor is like green. The second floor is red. The third floor is yellow. The fourth floor is blue. Um, she tells the congregation that the higher you go up, the younger the
mhm,
females are that are being trafficked. So
mhm,
the higher you go up, the more they pay because those are the
mhm,
younger victims.
Mm.
And it broke me. And so I was scheduled to speak that Sunday, and like you just have those moments where you're like, okay, this is not in my notes. This
mhm,
is about to
Mhm.
happen. And so I'm charging and admonishing the people. Don't just look at these slides that she's showing you and listen to these
mhm,
words and then leave service and go to Cane's because you got to get your manic combo. Like, let's do
Mhm.
something about this
mhm,
stuff that's
mhm,
happening,
Mhm.
not just in Nepal, but oh, by the way, a mile and a half up the street. And so I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
how, how we tell a story, I think one of the ways we have to do is we have to do it passionately. We're telling this
Mhm.
story to bring people in to infect them with the same passion, and not just passion, but call to action that we
Mhm.
have, that
Mm.
as a community minister, you have this privilege of seeing these things on a day in, day out basis. Some people may call it frontline ministry. So how I
Mhm.
tell a story will also, or
Mm.
can also, determine how people come alongside and help said
Mhm.
organization or said effort or said cause. It
Mhm.
could be by
Mhm.
writing a check. It could be by being boots on the ground. There's so many ways. I think the how we do it is so important though, because if we don't do it right, then the story can lose its impact, right? It can
Yeah.
Mm.
lose its effectiveness. And so I think as community ministers, we really have to be really aware of the how and be passionate about the how, but also be
Mhm.
strategic, right? So I
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah.
my passion to be wild and like, I also want it to be pinpointed and strategic so that we
Mhm.
impact change. Because if I'm passionate about it and the way
Mhm.
I tell a story and the how I tell a story causes six other people to be passionate about it,
Yeah.
then I just multiply our efforts, our
Yeah.
disciple making efforts by six. And that's an
Mhm.
amazing statistic to have.
I
Yeah.
love that.
And I feel like, I mean, the way that story was told, um, it was appropriate for the situation, right? And I feel like as
Mhm.
Hmm.
community ministers, we also have to remember I am a part of a larger organization. There is time restraints. It will fit in probably a larger service or will be sent in an email or like what's the context here? And I think it's
Hmm.
also our job to make sure that the persons that are being filmed or being vulnerable and sharing their story understand this is what we're hoping to do. Like we believe your story can really inspire X, Y, and Z. And like and some people will want a 10-minute video. They don't want a minute and a half. They are so
Hmm.
ready to tell their story. They want it to be the whole service or they got
Hmm.
so much to say. And so we have to
Hmm.
kind of help manage expectations while also like kind of carrying like delicately what it is
Mhm.
they're willingly opening up and sharing with us, and then again be a gatekeeper internally. Like I've sat with and been a, I don't know what you call it, but I was like the interviewer for a story about an individual who'd been trafficked. And um I I felt like, gosh, this is such an honor to be able to sit with this person that is so young and has been through so much and doesn't need to
Mm.
recite her story one more time. So
Hmm.
I have to just go, what makes you feel comfortable? Like, are you okay with this? She's like, yes. Okay.
Hmm.
Do you want to be on camera?
Mhm.
No, not my face, because she doesn't feel safe, right? So some people are like, it's
Mhm.
fine, you're free. Well, no, we don't understand what it's like to have your story put out
Hmm.
there. And so we have to
Yeah.
Yes.
always take the seat of, I'm not sure. Let me ask the person being filmed, not
Mm.
assuming.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
because we don't want that savior. Like we talked about being the voice for the voiceless. I don't want to be the wrong voice for the voiceless. I want to be like
Mm.
the right voice
Facts.
for the voiceless.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, okay, she doesn't want to be filmed. Okay, where do you feel most comfortable? At a park. Then we're going to film at a park. We're going to figure out the way to make lighting work. I get it. You want her in a
Hmm.
studio. That feels triggering. We're not going to go
Mhm.
there. These little moments, as much as you as a community minister have a chance to be a part of helping to walk this whole situation through, so that when the church says, I want to protect you and your story, the whole process actually protects her and her story, right? Like we have that. And
Mm.
so like the enemy is at work, right? That we're not wrestling against flesh and blood.
Mhm.
Every human we see is fighting a battle, and whether we get to share a victory that God has helped them kind of obtain in their story. Um, it's messy behind the scenes, y'all, and sometimes the salty part of
Mm.
it is that that means we don't get the perfect, pretty video that's gonna just be taken care of in 2 days and be easy, right? Like it's messy and we got to
Mhm.
be along for the ride to make sure we do it well.
Yeah, I
Mm.
totally agree with that. And I love what you alluded to about the wrestling, and like we have an enemy that we're contending against. We don't fight against people. We're trying to help people and come
Mhm.
alongside people and empower them by helping them tell their stories effectively. And then like there's this ripple effect or this chain reaction effect where I come alongside this person, like you were saying, Erica, you're being sensitive to this young lady's needs and what may be triggering to her. Like your posture in that it's communicating something to her
Hmm.
about God.
Hmm.
It's communicating
Yeah.
something to her about the love of God,
Yes.
that this is what safety actually looks like. Your voice actually
Hmm.
does matter.
Yeah.
Your considerations actually are important. And we get to
Hmm.
come alongside and be partners with these
Hmm.
folks in
Yeah.
the midst of them telling their story and then to the broader audience. It's just a really privileged position to be in, and we can't
Hmm.
take it lightly. And, you know, back to the wrestling thing, this is not like this Jesus following stuff is not for the faint
Mm-mm.
of heart. It's not, oh, tell me a Sunday school
Nope.
story and I'll remember
Mhm.
my memory verse and everything's just peachy. Does
Mhm.
not work like that. Read your New Testament,
Right.
read your Old Testament,
Mhm.
read that
Mm,
leather brown
mm,
book from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22, and you tell
Yeah.
me if this
mm.
Jesus following stuff is easy. That also means though that it's doable.
Yeah.
It's doable. We just trying to
Mhm.
keep it a whole buck with you all and let you know that it's not easy. It's
Yeah.
doable and it's so
Yeah.
rewarding. Telling stories, telling your own story, is so inspiring. And so we just want to
Mhm.
give you tools and nuggets and pieces on how to do it well, why
Mhm.
you do it, how to do it, when to tell stories. I
Yeah.
believe that as ministers, as Jesus followers, this is one of our most effective tools by far.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. For sure. For sure. I love that example.
100%.
I've got a good example of like a story that kind of went well. It's very personal, but the why was we were highlighting a ministry, and it was foster and adoption. We were kind of just sitting in the sanctuary, and it was foster and adoption, kind of month or celebration, and the win was at a time in our life, in my husband and my life, where we were struggling with infertility, and we were like, y'all, we were 7 years in. Like, we were devastated.
Mhm.
We had done all the things and nothing was working. And it
Mhm.
was a season of just a lot of sadness and a lot of grief and a lot of
Mhm.
fear. And the how was, there was this wonderful video, and it highlighted the negatives of the
Mhm.
reality of what was happening in other countries, and that the fact that there were kids who needed to be adopted, but also the positive of it was exactly what we needed when we needed it, and it
Mhm.
changed the trajectory of my husband's world. And he was a very firm no on, I don't want to adopt. And after
Mhm.
that video, the Lord just did something in his heart, and he turned to me and said, I'm in. I'm ready.
Wow.
This is it. I'm ready. Yes, it's a yes, like in that one video. And so I say that to say that it changed the trajectory of our life. We have an adopted daughter now, and it has brought us into a different
Mm.
community. It has brought us into a different narrative of what we thought we would never have.
Mm.
But it
Mhm.
also highlights the fact that that person who was making that video or editing that video or doing all the things, or staging the lighting, and then
Mhm.
pressing play, none of that is quote unquote not ministry, but it doesn't feel like
Mhm.
ministry. It's
Mhm.
kind of far removed versus the people who were our adoption caseworkers and was walking us
Mhm.
through the entire process. So, like, just community minister, if when you're listening to this, just keep in mind that, like, the stories that you come up against and the frontline ministry that you do
Mhm.
every day is
Mhm.
important. It's the most
Mhm.
important. But
Mhm.
as you're relating to your staff, your production people, your creative arts people, like all the people that are on staff with you, just to bring them along in the process and let them know and understand and underline that for them, that what they do is also ministry, because it affected
Mhm.
Mhm.
my life in a major, major way.
Gosh, that
Yeah.
is like so cool. And it's just like,
Uh,
who, if the person, like you were saying, pushing play and doing the lighting, like the person who chose that story, who knows? They could have been burnt out on storytelling. They could have been like, I, Or they could be so passionate about it. And I don't know, community minister, wherever you are, but I know that I've been in seasons where I like lose sight of how important storytelling is. And then I have a meeting and I have to come up with all the stories and I keep forgetting and I can't think of one. Or I'm in a call where, you know, my counterpart is sharing all types of stories off the cuff. And I feel guilty that I'm going to my project management software and reading the list of stories I've written because I can't remember one. And you're not a bad community minister or a person less passionate about storytelling if you have a project management software or a list you have to go to. I have to remind myself, maybe that means it's really valuable and I don't want to lose it or I don't want to forget about it, right? And just don't
Mm,
forget what's hanging in the balance of you telling a story and seeing it through well, because you've got people like Becky that are sitting in the audience or they're listening or they're hearing it from someone who is sitting in the audience, and you don't know the kind of impact that you can have. This is not knock on where I work, but I think we were in an era amongst the churches at large where there was a ton of pictures on the wall of white people holding shovels. And like, we did it. Like we've done it. Look at all the things we've done, which is not, white people aren't bad. The shovels aren't bad. Gardening work is not bad. So you can do all of those things. But it felt like the photos to depict what it is we're passionate about and compassion stopped there. And
yeah.
I had a hard time with, like, that doesn't scream, we still need you. And like, there's so much work to be done. And there are human
Yeah.
lives in the balance of this, right? So instead of us getting on a school campus to like clean out the garden, we're not actually interacting with any kids on that campus. So there's something missing, right? So, and how do we tell a
Mm,
celebration story without it just ending like, all right, well, we did it. So great job,
Mhm.
everyone.
yeah.
Like, how do we keep the flag wheel moving? How do we continue to re-inspire?
Yeah.
Even the stories that Becky talked about, like the mood ones, are the ones where you have to declare, okay, something's wrong, and kind of let people sit and squirm and be uncomfortable, because
Mhm.
Yeah.
wrestling's not quite comfortable, right?
Right.
Like, none
Right.
of us are wrestling in a situation, or we're not wrestling with situations like the enemy without coming out uncomfortable or a little sweaty,
Yeah.
which tastes a little salty. Like, we leave with like
Salty
a, oh
talk.
Mhm.
dang. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's our job to
Mhm.
help make it palatable, help people see a direct next step, help people process and begin to have new lenses that they
Yeah.
see the world that they live in a little bit differently. And so storytelling, if it may be the most important thing you do, um,
Mhm.
just don't forget the Jesus part, obviously, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the storytelling's
No,
important.
I totally agree with that. And that sentiment of that it might be the most important thing we do. The word says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, or the telling of our story. So
Yes.
overcome
Preach.
what? Overcome adversity. We need the
Mhm.
stories. We need the
Mhm.
testimonies. We need these accounts of ours and of
Mhm.
others so that we can help people overcome.
Mhm.
And I love it. It doesn't always have to be my story. It doesn't always have to be
Mhm.
my experience. Like, I just
Mhm.
heard Becky's story about her adopted daughter, and now I'm gonna tell that story. I'm gonna repeat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be viral. Just think of your daughter, her life trajectory changing in the moment your husband
Mhm.
says, I'm all in.
Mhm.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, boom, he
Yeah.
overcame, she overcame, you overcame. However
Mhm.
many hundreds and thousands of people have come in contact with you all, hearing this story over and over again,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
platforms that she'll get to tell it. How
Mhm.
many people's lives changed because of one story? And we got so many stories to tell. So we
Yeah.
have to
Mhm.
tell them.
Mhm.
Do not listen, community minister. Do not mute your story, and do
Yeah.
not abbreviate your
Mm.
story or the
Yeah.
story of those that you come in contact with. Now, don't exploit them. We already
Right.
talked about that. And
Mhm.
don't underestimate the power and the impact that they can have and that they will have if
Mhm.
we tell it. And if we tell it right or effectively, like we talked about in the beginning, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
the skies are the limit.
Mm.
The skies, we're literally
It's true.
repeating stories. We're talking about Moses' story. I was just telling somebody the other
Yeah.
day, the
Yeah.
crux and the foundation of our faith is based in some crazy stuff, some crazy stories.
Mhm.
Like we
Mhm.
For
celebrate this
sure.
guy named Moses. This guy was talking to a bush, y'all, a burning
Yeah, it
bush.
was.
He was having a conversation with a burning bush with his Jordans, I mean, with his sandals off.
That's
Like, come
funny.
on. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? We're still telling this
I
story. It's
love it.
still effective. It's still impactful. So tell stories, make them effective, make them impactful, and um, make them be wrapped in passion
Yeah.
and fervor and just
Hmm.
excitement because
Yeah.
that's really what they represent.
Can I say something that I just feel like I need to tell myself? So I'll say it, tell myself, and then
Mm.
I'll tell maybe all of
Yeah.
you at the same time. It gets so tempting to only think that storytelling internally means stage time or weekend service storytelling,
Mm.
because that is not the only place to tell a story. Sure, it's like
Yeah,
that's
that's
like
very true.
top tier. You want all the people to hear it, but don't not tell a story or not be willing to tell it differently in a different
Mm.
mode medium or whatever. Like, you could write a story, you could do a social media version of a story, you can start your meetings with your volunteer team, with your staff, by
Mm.
just sharing stories. Like, create a culture of storytelling, and some
Yeah.
stories might be repeated in all different ways, but
That's
it's
so
the
good.
the end prize is not just in the sermon or on a weekend, because
Yeah.
we lose sight of telling the multitude of stories we have in the treasure chest and in the bag that we're carrying along. That it could be that in those smaller, more intimate moments, that's really the setting to be able to engage further about the story, right? And so I think
Mm.
we have to forget sometimes about the number. Like, oh, if I tell this story, maybe this many people will sign up. And this, sometimes stories can be told smaller version. It can be truncated, it can be elongated, it can be told multiple times, but it also
Mm.
can be told a lot of different ways to a lot of numbers of people, and it doesn't make it any less great of a story. God can't work less, in that. Becky just
Mm.
told
Right.
two of us, and it's impacting us. So I just think I need to hear that, because I get tempted to go, well, if it's not till on a weekend, then maybe, we'll just wait.
Mm, that's so
I love
good.
it.
That's so good. Well, hey, listen, you all, thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning in to Salty Talk. And you can follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter /X, whatever you prefer. If you're old school, it's Twitter. If you're new school, it's X. And don't forget to check out our website at communityminister.network. We are so excited. Please leave us a comment on the comments. Let us know what
Mhm.
you enjoyed, what you didn't like, maybe add a story to the comments
Mm.
that we can talk about at a later date and in another episode. So once again, thank you all so much. So on behalf of my other co-host, this has been Salty Talk, and we want y'all to stay salty.
Stay salty.
Hey, bye, guys.